Judge, you've commented that relationships are so important, and you never know who you're actually talking to. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah. So when I took this position on the task force, I had to meet the U.S. attorneys in Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota. And it was my job to approve funds to deal with large-scale drug trafficking organizations, and I had to work with all the federal agencies, DEA, IRS, FBI, the Marshal Service, and bring people together to work and to move forward. So I had conferences in each of these cities where these U.S. attorneys were. So when my name came up, I didn't call anybody and ask them to stand up for me. They all stood up for me. And each of them, except my U.S. attorney, became federal judges. In Wisconsin, Joe Stadtmuller. In Minnesota, Jim Rosenbaum. In Iowa, Jerry Fines, bankruptcy judge. And then Sarah Barker in Indiana. Unbeknownst to me, Sarah Barker had worked for 7 years in D.C. for Senator Chuck Percy. So you never know in life when these connections are going to be made. You just never know. And when I took the position in the U.S. Attorney's Office, it was not a time where prosecutors were, it was not considered a terrific position in the African American community.
There's still some of that.
And there's still some of that. And so I need to tell this story. So how did I go there? I had decided, because of Perry Mason and what I had seen, that I wanted to be a defense attorney. So I had applied to the Federal Defender's Office. And a black woman lawyer in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Mary Ann Jackson, who ultimately became a state court judge, heard that I was applying, and she called me and asked me to go to lunch. So I didn't know her, but I'm like, okay. So that's the other thing is, sometimes you don't even know when the opportunity is there, but you have to say yes. That's what, to me, you have to say yes. You have to just, when something, even if it's the slightest chance. But I was like, what did I have to lose? So I met with her, because I knew I didn't want to be a prosecutor. And she said, well, I wanted to talk to you because do you realize that the real power in the criminal justice system is in the prosecutor's office? I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? She said, well, we decide ultimately with the concurrence of the U.S. Attorney's Office who gets indicted. We decide who doesn't. We make the recommendations on sentencing. And we need to have African Americans in that process because you have a voice that needs to be heard. And you can actually be helpful because you can make sure things are fair. And I thought about what she said, and that made a lot of sense to me, and that's why I applied. And I must say that sometimes when I'd be out in the community or at a party or something, I didn't say I was a prosecutor. I would say I worked for the federal government because it wasn't popular. But I knew within myself it was the right thing to do. So I could make sure, for example, if agents were doing a search warrant or an arrest warrant, that we actually had probable cause. I could make sure the agents did things the appropriate way in compliance with the Constitution and the rules that were set up in the office. When I dealt with a potential criminal defendant in the grand jury and had to advise them of their rights, I could break down the rights and make sure they understood. So, for example, saying you have a right to counsel to represent you, even though counsel can't be in the room because this is the grand jury. I would say that, and then I would say, in this counsel, if you can't afford counsel, there's a federal defender's office 4 floors down. We can stop this right now. You can go talk to the federal defender. It won't cost you anything. Do you understand that? Yes, I understand that. Like, there's a role. So I always felt that I could make sure the system was fair and was fair for African Americans. And so that's why I did that job in the U.S. Attorney's Office.